I thank you, gentle sir, she said, for what you are pleased to say, and bidding you good morning now, I'll call another day. So this is, I believe, of the moment of crisis. The crisis, like to stay or not to stay. Here I get reminded of, Hamlet. It's like to be or not to be. We see that the fly has sobered down a little. No more is she too intense in her address to Spider. She seemed to be too clear in the initial stanza with her reputation of, oh no, no, to ask me is in vain. You remember this line? Something has changed now with this little fly. The tone has changed. What do you think could be the reason? Is it flattery? Yes, of course, it is. People are too vulnerable when it comes to flattery. We need to be careful with our dealings with smart people. We need to appreciate the human understanding or the human psyche when it comes to flattery and false appreciation. People need to be vigilant before falling prey to false appreciation.
And there's no doubt that Mary Howitt wants to educate children about the realities of the natural world. Although the poem reads like a fantasy or a fable, as both of the characters behave like humans, there is a tough lesson, a serious lesson to be learned. Ultimately, these two characters they act as metaphors for certain types of people who exist in our society, in our world. The fly seems to be intrigued by the spider's words. If we carefully observe the few lines of this stanza, we can see the overwhelming sense of danger with a twig of mystery. Surprisingly, if you have observed the contrast, you can see the absolute control of a spider in contrast to the unease and nervous fly. And at this time, I believe that the spider knew that it is hard to control impulses. He has, in fact, used all the tactics that were available through his experience, and he has tried it out everything in this case. Sadly, I would say that the fly was gradually taken by her impulses.
The spider turned him around about and went into his den, for well he knew the silly fly would soon be back again. So he wove a subtle web in a little corner sly, and set his table ready to dine upon the fly. So these lines show how confident the spider is. I believe that the most common known form of manipulation in this world comes packed in form of flattery. It's it's also the most dangerous one as it is the veil of most hidden agendas. Fly has been lured into this false praise of flattery. But did you observe the impact of this flattery? Flattery has the power to influence, to corrupt, to deceive. And flattery, I believe, over the years, it has been used as a lethal weapon. So, as readers, we may still be guessing as to whether the fly would stay or go away. But do you think that what the spider seems, do the spiders seem to be in doubt? He has won his battle of instincts, and look at these lines. For well he knew the silly fly would soon be back again. How confident he is. He has mastered this art. His subtle web is so dangerous. And why is it dangerous? Because it is not something that can be easily seen by a gullible fly. So the trap is ready, it is set, and he is just ready to dine upon. Come hither, hither, pretty fly, with the pearl and silver wing. Your robes are green and purple. There's a crest upon your head. Your eyes are like the diamond bright, but mine are dull. Look at the vivid
images used by the spider in this stanza. Appreciation now comes in form of describing her in the most sensual way. Look at the examples: robes of green and purple, her gauzy wings that she had earlier are now purple and silver. Look at the manipulation that spider is so careful in discussing the minute details. Even the crown is not left behind. Her brilliant eyes are now shining like bright diamond. Wow, he's so good with adjectives. Hats off to him. He's so quick, he's so smart, and many minute details. How can a poor little fly resist this? Loaded with similes and comparisons, makes the spider look so dull.
Exquisite details that follow. In fact, we might be very hard pressed to find a fly described in such a beautiful way, right? And note the use of simile. The poet, likens the fly's bright eyes to diamonds against the spiders, which are, very dull, and they are compared to, in fact, lead. There's no doubt that the spider may be luring the fly into his trap right from the beginning. And just look at the beautiful contrast that Mary Howitt comes up with: a devilish spider in comparison to our innocent fly. We start pitying her. She was strong-headed initially. Somewhere in between we find her vulnerable, and we find her somebody who cannot resist the temptations and flattery. And I would say it's difficult to understand sometimes the working of our brain and its chemistry as to how it affects our willpower. I would say it becomes vulnerable at times. Maybe sometimes it's our current mood that decides whether we would surrender to the temptations. And I would say, as students, you need to know how to keep cool when temptations get hot. In fact, one needs to learn a simple theory, the theory of push and pull of temptations. Little fly, hearing his wily, flattering words, came slowly
Flitting by. Writing a poem is definitely not an easy job. It is more a careful choice of words. Now look at the word used here, alas, and it is used twice, indicating something serious. As the word alas is used to indicate disappointment, sadness, grief, also a concern. So, what it directly suggests is Mary Howitt is now worried about this fly and probably given all the hope. A very cautious and smart looking fly, which she initially was, now falls prey finally to this cunning spider. Vanity, no doubt, happens to be her downfall. His flattering words did cost Fly too much. The words she came slowly flitting by talks about the process. It wasn't immediate. The spider really worked hard to lure her in all the possible ways. If we now look at the characteristic of spider, then the spider is a representative of evil in this world. He is a true example of how these evil-minded people hide behind flattery and kind words to get their things done, and this is how they trap innocent people. There's no doubt he's cunning, he's shrewd, he's smart, and knows exactly how to get what he wants, and quite experienced one.
And at this stage, it confirms the spider's plan, which was right at the beginning. And I would say, as students, are you smart enough? I would say, were you observant to see some of the signs of his plan at the beginning? I would say flattering words are too colorful to even see the depth surrounding. We don't tend to see the, in fact, trap even. We are so blurred by our emotions, feelings, and they overtake our senses most of the times. In fact, we should not get fascinated with these endless designs when we come across a person like, Spider, who is really smart, has done all his work, right? And he's just playing it one by one. In fact, are there any clues to the fly to make her not to trust Spider? Can you find any of them? I would suggest that you need to go for one more reading of the poem to find out if there are any clues. Apart from that, do you find the dark humor, the images used in the text that evoke that humor? You just try to find that. The spider had planned to be so nice, and he knows that she would return soon, and this is where the conflict ends. Her buzzing wings, she starts, flying, and she comes nearer and near to the spider's web. And all this while, all right, there's just one thing that she does. She keeps thinking of her brilliant eyes. We talked about uh, her arrogance and pride, her vanity that would take her down. All that she thinks is about the green and her purple color, this mixed color that makes the color of her body look so beautiful. And all this while, rather than thinking about the shrewd spider and his plan, she's thinking of her head, her crown. And look how interestingly the poet puts it, poor foolish thing. At last, all that the spider had to do is he had to just jump upon this fly, this foolish thing, right? And that too, fiercely. And he, in fact, dragged her up into his winding stairs, into his den, which no more looked what it was earlier, into his little parlor. But she'll never come out again. So, what could be the possible reason for the fly gradually giving up, and why did she approach the spider's web? And that too, it was a very foolish kind of a thing to do. I would say it is nothing but her sheer stupidity. But what we should not forget is the main reason is that she gets lost in a glorified image expressed by this shrewd spider. And the flattery is so powerful that she can just not resist it, and she's engrossed in her beauty and she gets trapped finally. Now there is nothing more, I believe, to be done by spider. The plan was ready, the trap was already set. All that the spider had to do was to just pounce on her fiercely and held her fast. Look at the sheer contrast. The same little parlor has become so dismal den that waits for her end. But how smart he was in describing it so attractively that she falls prey to it. And before we end, let's look at the dramatic irony to what the fly had mentioned earlier in her resistance when she says, "To ask me is in vain, for who goes up your winding stairs can never come down again." How true this is. And it is the same thing that happens for her, and we pity her. We move on to the last lines of the text. "And now, dear little children, you may this story read. To idle, silly, flattering words, I pray you never give heed. Unto an evil counselor, close heart and ear and eye." Now, look at these three important words used. You need to close your heart, you should not be emotional, right?
You need to be smart enough as to what you hear might not be correct, might not be right all the time, and close your eye. You need not look at them because that would tempt you. And take a lesson from this tale of the spider and the fly. So, what starts as a story, what looks more like a storytelling, we see a change in the style of narration when the poem ends. In conclusion, it is a clear message that Mary Howitt addresses her audience in form of a moral lesson or a warning. I would say that the most common form of manipulation in this world comes packed in form of flattery. It's also the most dangerous one, as it is the veil of most hidden agendas. And Fly, as we see an example through this story, she has been lured into this false praise of flattery. Did you observe the impact of flattery? Flattery has the power to influence, to corrupt. I would say it has the power to deceive, and flattery over the years has been used as a lethal weapon. And Mary Howitt is very direct, and she goes to an extent at the end to say that take a lesson from the spider and the fly. She is, in fact, counseling. Right? No more storytelling. She's direct. Moreover, the spider that is used in this story is a representative of evil in this world, and he is a true example of how these evils hide behind flattery and kind words to get their things done. And this is how they trap innocent people. And there's no doubt he's cunning, he's shrewd, he's smart, and knows exactly how to get what he wants. But at the same time, one needs to be cautious. We move on to the theme of our poem. One of the powerful theme is flattery. This is, I believe, a very common human weakness, and at one point of time, I think in our lives, all of us are taken over by, flattery, and the comments we get from our friends and relatives and people who are very close to us. And it reveals that these flattery words, they trick us to such an extent that we tend to forget everything else, which might lead to some destruction, which might lead to tragedy. And flattery corrupts both, I would believe, the receiver and the giver as well. And it is here where our theme becomes so prominently displayed. So, what killed the fly was one's weakness to flattery and false praise. Most of us like appreciation or compliment, and I believe flattery is like any positive thing. I would say that flattery is a form of an energy. When you listen to these false words, it would uplift you and make you feel better about who you are. And this limits us to more disastrous end, and it plays with our ego. And these heaps of praise woven like a web by cunning people like spider, we start believing those words as truth, which leads to our end. We move on to the next theme, temptations. In fact, temptations come along our path every day in our lives, day in, day out, whether we are inside the house or whether we are out. It has become part of our life. The key fact is trying to avoid being tempted. Many are able to resist it, and that is really good. But I would sadly say that majority of us are not able to do that, and there are hundreds of reasons from where these temptations get originated, and let's not get into that. That's a different topic altogether. But the fact remains that these temptations makes it very hard for us to resist, and after being tempted, one really needs to be very strong to overcome those feelings and make the right decision.
Similar is the theme of not giving in to tempting words of praise and adulations, no matter how seductive they may be. If we carefully see appearance and reality, they are one of the very common themes attempted by numerous creative writers in literature across the world. As in literature, we also come across these kinds of situations even in our lives where we really get confused between appearance and reality. It appears difficult to decide what is real and what is deceptive. But if we closely, pragmatically begin to see the difference, probably we see the real state of things. And Mary Howitt wants the readers to see this difference through this fable. Let's talk about the clear definitions of these two concepts. By appearance, we mean what something looks like or how someone looks like. On the other hand, by reality, what we mean is the state of things as they are, as they exist. The emerging difference here is that of reality and appearance. Things as they appear versus what they really are. For instance, sometimes in dark, a piece of rope would appear to be a snake, but as we see it closely, we realize that it is just a piece of rope. This highlights the key difference that exists between the two worlds. In real life, someone may appear to be kind, nonetheless, in reality, the person might be the complete opposite of it. Just like the spider, he is a representative of evil in this world, and he is a true example of how these evils hide behind flattery and kind words to get their things done. And this is how they trap innocent people. So, Mary Howitt wants the readers to clearly understand that often the reality can be extremely blurred and concealed in certain situations of life, that it might be difficult to distinguish. And this is precisely the reason why all of us should always be observant as to notice the real from the appearance of it. Versus brain. I would say the poem seems light-hearted, but teaches a tough lesson. There's a deeper social, contextual side to this poem. The theme of the poem could easily be taken further into feminism and valuing or teaching girls the wisdom as opposed to placing their whole value in their beauty, and fly being illustrated in such a beautiful way. There's a great message of being careful not to trust strangers in this wonderful, tale by Mary Howitt. How flattery gets you in trouble. Especially what I like is the bluntness of this story, the truth, the forwardness of this story. As a take home lesson, I would tell my students is to invest in yourself. Confidence is attractive. Invest in yourself so that you feel good, professionally, emotionally, physically, socially, spiritually. It's time to work on your growth, your studies, your career, your mental and physical health. Meet friends that make you feel good and confident. It's very important to know the difference between pride and want and love and like. These are important, in fact, words. And one should know the difference between appearance and reality. All that glitters is definitely not gold. I hope you have heard this statement. And can we judge things by their appearances, or is it there more to it than that? I leave you with this question.